So this is Arno with the BGCL. I'm here with my guest, Hayden. Hayden, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Hey guys, my name is Hayden. So I'm an architectural designer in Calgary, Alberta. I just graduated from university just a couple years ago, and I've been working since then essentially. And I know Arno from way back in high school, basically taking art class together. So this is quite a throwback. I'm glad to be here and talk about this and catch up.
Absolutely. So Hayden, I know you mentioned you were an architectural designer. What is the difference between an architect and an architectural designer? So, like, what do you do for a living? I guess is my question.
Essentially, it's just a semantic difference in the title. So architect is a professionally protected term in Canada, which just means that there is a governing body of architects at the federal and the provincial level, actually mostly at the provincial level, and they give out stamps essentially similar to engineering for people becoming architects. And to do that, you have to go through sort of a number of years of work work experience hours in different areas of architecture, and then pass sort of a series of tests and go through mentorship and everything. So it's essentially until you typically it takes people like a few years out of school to get that designation and pass the test. So until then, you're an architectural designer and not an architect for legal reasons, because you don't want them to get mad at you. But yeah, that's kind of like the only real difference is and that's specific to Canada as well. In many other places, like the UK has similar licensing to us, but most other places, once you graduate from a Master of Architecture graduate program, then you can call yourself an architect essentially after that point.
Awesome. Why did you originally get into this career?
I got into architecture because I've always been fairly passionate about design. I did an undergrad in graphic design and web design and sort of all kinds of things around that. I've always been really passionate about design and creativity, but also I really appreciate kind of hands-on concrete like physical outcomes of things I do whenever possible. Like I do enjoy building things, and I do enjoy kind of tactile qualities of material, whether it's kind of like fabric or building material or things like that. So I think architecture was a really natural path to be able to explore both those creative outlets and passions at the same time.
Awesome. And what does the day-to-day look like for you?
Extremely varied and diverse. So our office is maybe unique in the broader field of architectural or design offices, in that we're a design build firm. So we have designers on staff, of which I'm one of four, and then we also have construction managers and builders on staff. So we design projects for clients and then also serve as general contractors as well. So that makes our day to day a little bit more kind of diverse and unpredictable, in that we are kind of what you would call a traditional like design architect or designer, but also project manager in the sense of managing or interfacing with the construction side a bit more, going to site, conveying information to and from there. So that's one part of it. I also am a photographer for our office, so I do lots of project photography, lots of promotional things. Um, and then yeah, we chase competitions. We do housing at a few different scales. We do multifamily housing, some public art. So it's really kind of like designing probably about 20 to 25% of the time, and then managing things the other 75 to 80% of the time for the most part, I would say in general.
That sounds like a very diverse kind of work experience that you have. Very much not your traditional, just kind of draw your building and that's it. Hey.
Yeah, it's definitely, has its pros and cons. Like we mostly do smaller kind of projects, so things turn around a lot quicker, but it is like being involved with it a lot more meaningfully through the process. Uh, you would still, as a traditional architect, design something and then be involved in overseeing construction and interfacing with that, but it's a little more front heavy for you doing the work and then kind of passing it off and sort of visiting and following up, but not being as hands-on later in the process. Like for us, there's certain types of projects and situations where we will go to site and actually like physically build some of the things. Like for some of our public art projects, for example, I've gone places and actually built the things myself and installed them. And same for certain details on some of our houses. If we want it done a certain way or just want to build something, that can be part of our job as well.
That's awesome. Really ties into why you got into this career. Um, what type of training or schooling did you do this? I know you talked a little bit about that, but specifically, what type of training or schooling did you need in order to get into this?
To do architectural design in pretty much universally, whether you want to pursue accreditation as an architect or not, that's kind of a distinction, is that many people, you can practice architecture and design houses up to a certain size and lots of other things without being an accredited architect, or you can run an office that does stuff bigger than that and then just kind of like partner with accredited people. So whether you want to be accredited or not, you generally need a master's degree of architecture, in Canada and in most places. So that was kind of what I did. There's a couple ways to do that, being some universities in Canada now offer an undergrad in architecture, which then leads into a master's degree, but you essentially end up doing it in, I believe, 5 or 6 years. It's a bit shorter versus if you do another undergrad and then go into a master of architecture. Your undergrad's 4 years, your master's is 3 years. So it's 7 years in total. But you can, like I did a general undergrad, and you can do kind of any undergraduate degree and then get into a master of architecture just based off showing a portfolio of kind of creative ability, whether that's, writing or whatever else. It doesn't have to be architectural. And that's kind of what I did. I pursued other design avenues that gave me some of the relevant drawing skills and then used that to create a portfolio and get into school. And I also did a 1 year postgraduate sort of degree, not a PhD. It was kind of a second master's where I kind of got paid to do research for our faculty on digital fabrication and like robotics and architecture, which was something I was and am still really passionate about, and kind of pursuing more complex ways of modeling and of building, and things like that. So that was kind of a special add-on at the end, but definitely worth it for me at least.
Totally. So from what I'm hearing, it's about 7 years if you get your undergrad, and then you apply to do your master's with a portfolio. So even if you got
Right.
your undergrad in, let's say, math or something like that, you can still apply to go in to do your master's with it if you have a portfolio.
Right. Yeah, as long as you have the portfolio and you have sort of a competitive GPA average, you can get in from anything. In our class, we had some people from finance, lots of people from general sciences, and from sort of other stuff. And there's even, further out from that, I know classically trained like anthropologists, and writers and things like that have gone into this, and psychologists. So it really is kind of people that wanted whatever other sort of set of skills or knowledge to then take into architecture, and it often works really well for them.
Awesome. So training and schooling is obviously very important, but how does someone get a job in this field? Let's say you just came out of university. How would you go about getting a job in this field?
Multiple different ways. There's sort of a really, I guess the most traditional way is kind of you graduate school, you have your portfolio of work in school, and you kind of go reach out to people with your portfolio, who are hiring, or even, people personally, whether they're hiring or not, and kind of look for work. And in many cases, you'll end up getting hired on to do a specific project at a point, certain period of time in the office. And then, if you do well in that, they'll kind of give you a full-time position after. There's lots of different ways. So like when I graduated, I was in I was in a unique position where I graduated at the beginning of the fall semester and I was still a student. So I was able to do a student internship at the office I'm currently at for the rest of that. And that was really valuable to sort of get my foot in the door, because you're not, the government subsidizes these internships. So firms are more likely to hire interns like that because it costs them a bit less money. And then you just kind of prove how valuable you can be as a full-time employee after that. So quite a few ways. There's also lots of people who, when you go through school, all or most of your profs are practicing architects in some capacity. So many people, you go through a certain studio, we call it, which is kind of a semester long class with a certain professor. And if you perform really well in that, they often will sort of give like internships over the summer or kind of work projects to some of their top students. And then that's a potential in after school as well, to keep working at their offices.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing is it's mostly about getting your foot through the door and showing that you have quality work, and then going from there.
Essentially, the industry, particularly in Calgary and most places in Canada, is really small. So you have a really strong opportunity in going through school to make those connections and sort of prove what you can do, because those profs and people will know lots of other people and you'll get references, you'll get professional connections, things like that. It's a really interconnected sort of network, which makes it really valuable in that way if you're pursuing work after, to be able to draw upon that.
Awesome. What are some of the challenges that are faced in this career?
Uh, it's hard work, I guess. It's it's really fun, but it's very sort of passion driven. I think anybody that pursues kind of a design based career in any aspect, does it because they're passionate. And the plus side of that is it's great, it's fun. The downside is that, your work's in many senses never really done, because you can kind of like push something as far as you want to push it, really. And so that, that leads to some longer work hours and things like that, but also just, you end up being responsible for a lot and managing a lot, which also leads to a bit more work, especially, in school, in architecture school. There's kind of a general expectation that it's very hard, and it's a lot of, and it's, you're often given more work than you can really do, just to see how much of it you can get done. um which is, culture wise, maybe challenging in some ways, but also, you know keeping in mind that you'll end up graduating and having to compete for jobs and do this work. So I guess they want people to make sure they're really committed to it and are passionate enough about it to pursue it and to be competitive and be good at what they do, not just kind of show up to make money or get a job or whatever. Because you don't make a ton of money as an architect, so people do it because they like it.
Absolutely. Do you have any tips or oh, sorry, do you have any tips or advice for youth who are interested in this career?
I think the thing I said before about really sort of, if you're thinking of going into it, and I mean, maybe as a general statement for going into any career field, consider every day that you go to school or whatever as a potential opportunity to impress someone, or make a good impression, or meet someone, and use that mindset throughout your schooling, because those professional connections are maybe equally as valuable as the actual education you get once you get out of school to be able to do the work that you want to do, and go the places you want to go. So I would say that is a first thing. It's kind of always aim to make an impression, even if it's not super obvious at the time. There's kind of lots of opportunities that happen for me that just because I always sort of worked my hardest, and even in situations where I didn't foresee it, I kind of got lots of opportunities out of them eventually from certain people. So that, and then also, um, I think an interesting thing about architecture is that it touches on tons of different areas of expertise or different kind of potential interests that people have. And the most interesting architecture, I think, is people that take their pre-existing passions and interests and knowledge basis and go into architecture and try and apply that in interesting ways. So that's the other thing I would say for anyone that wants to go into it is kind of like pursue all the things you're passionate about, and build build a diverse kind of personality and character for yourself of like all the things that you love. And then when you get into architecture, you'll often find ways to incorporate those other things into it in really constructive ways, which is produces cool work in my opinion.
That's awesome. That's really great advice. Thank you. So this is a bit of an aside, but I know you mentioned you had done some public art as well as various buildings. If youth were, let's say, in Calgary, where could they see those buildings or public art?
We have a website. It's www.studionorth.ca. You can go to that website. All of our work's on it. I would say I've only been there since last September, so only a little bit of work that I've specifically been working on is on there so far, because lots of it's being built. But we have a pretty broad body of work over the life of the office, which is about 7 years now, 8 years, I believe, predating me being there. And they've done lots of really cool stuff from public art to housing, and beyond that. So definitely check it out, because it's a good example of, I think, the breadth of work that you can potentially be involved with, uh, after pursuing architecture.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Hayden. I really appreciate it. For everyone that's signed on, just a reminder that we will be posting videos all week. And if you have any questions for Hayden, you can submit them on our website, and we'd be happy to ship those along to him. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Thanks.